Hi, everybody. Well, I am sitting here about to have a conversation with my guest, Monette Richards, who is the president of Secular Woman. And thank you so much for joining me, Monette.
Oh, thanks for reaching out to me and having me on. It's awesome.
Thanks for agreeing to talk with me, even though I know that women aren't supposed to talk to men anymore. Am I getting that wrong?
I'm pretty sure we hate you all. Just the white
Yeah.
men, though.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, just yeah.
uh, so we'll start and we'll end by talking about some really good stuff. And then in the middle, we'll talk about some really, really horrible stuff that has been festering in the atheist secular community for years.
Years. Yeah.
It's finally starting to bubble up to the surface bubble up to the surface for like the fourth or fifth time, but or more people are starting to notice it now. So
It's a bigger bubble each time, I think, is what it is. So,
it's pretty soon it's going to be like Krakatoa. Like the next time it's just going to explode.
We'll have new continents and everything. It'll
be great. It'll be great. That's what some of us want anyway, right? Let's just start over. But before we get to that, as I mentioned, you are the president of Secular Woman. So why don't we start by just tell us a little bit about what Secular Woman is, what the aims of your organization is, and why it's important that we all know about it and support it if we can.
Awesome. Yeah. Let's see. In 2012, Secular Woman was founded by a group of, I think there were 4 of them, women who decided, at that time, that was like the code of conduct at events time, the big explosion, elevator gate, all that kind of stuff. And they decided that there needed to be an organization that focused on women because we didn't have that anywhere. So they founded Secular Woman. Our mission is to amplify the voices of secular women. Simple enough. So we've had various programs over the years where we've had a speakers bureau. We have Abort Theocracy, which is one of my favorites just because it pretty much says everything that it's about in its name. And yeah, we've been at conferences. We've put on the Secular Woman Work Conference. We do workshops at Skepticon. And, it's men and women. And we're just here to try to give voice to women and amplify it. We go to, every year there's an annual heads meeting, basically, that's a meeting of all the organizations so they can kind of talk about what's going on and make sure everybody's aware on the same page, whatever. And we had been going, I think we went 4 out of the last 5 years. And then this last year, the rules changed so that organizations like Secular Women were left out, Secular Women. So, we're working with the Secular Coalition of America now to fix that, to get us back in.
That would be nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
That kind of got drowned out by the Krauss thing, but I read that when your organization released the statement about that. It was about 2 weeks ago, something like that. Right. And I thought it was just outrageous. I was like, "What the hell is this? The people who are pushing for change, and you change the rules so that you don't have to talk to them." I mean,
yep. I mean, I heard the phone call too on my way out. Someone saying, next year it's going to be members of SCA only, which. The meeting predates Secular Coalition.
Yeah.
So it wasn't all about members. And we can't really afford to be, we are working with SCA. I will give them that, but we can't afford to pay their membership dues every year. And from what I understand, and I'm not even sure about this part, though, is that it takes a lot of time from the board members. We're an all-volunteer board, Most of us have jobs. I don't right now, but we're not talking about that. No. So, but we've been a little bit quiet the last couple of years. We've stayed alive, but we've really toned it back. We did some board changes. We've got some new people on the board now that I'm really, really stoked about. I think we have a really good group. So we're starting to ramp up again and starting to do more things. And I'm super excited to be back and part of this team and involved again.
Yeah, I glanced at the website before we started talking, and your board is like murderer's row right now. There's some really awesome, like Stephanie Zvan, who I absolutely love, who's like one of my North Stars as far, like if Stephanie says something that I disagree with, she's one of those people that I'm like, oh, maybe I
need
should
to think about that. Yeah.
And And Bridget Crutchfield,
Yeah.
who I love. Actually, Bridget and I don't really know each other, so I probably shouldn't use her first name, but I did anyway. And but we don't really know each other, but we're Facebook friends, and that happened because I just think she's so great, and so I reached out to a mutual friend of ours on Facebook, and I said, "Is it cool? Do you think would it be all right if I send her a friend request?" And she and our mutual friend, she said, "Well, I'll go ask her."
No,
And
that's
she
good.
asked, and Bridget, she gave me the okay. It was like being a stand-up comic and having Johnny Carson wave you over, after your set.
She's pretty awesome. Yeah, we're
She did.
tattoo pals. We've got our tattoo twinsies.
Oh,
We've got
cool.
the same tattoo in the same place. Hers is just reverse for mine. So it's cool.
Cool. So when you touch them together, do you?
It's Wonder Twin powers,
Your Wonder Twin
man.
powers
We activate
activate?
the shit out of those. Form of Atheism. No.
Yes.
And Sam Faruqi, you probably haven't heard of yet. Yet, I say. She worked at SSA very briefly until they just totally fired the Columbus office.
Yeah.
And she interned at CFI. Yeah, she writes some really incredible stuff that if you can catch it, do. And Felicity too she's one of those quieter. She gets a ton of shit done. You don't hear from her much. She's not one of the upfront like we are going "Arr!" But yeah, she's pretty incredible. And of course, Kim Rapier is one of the co-founders, and she's still around. So yeah.
I know her very slightly as well. She's also a Facebook friend who I don't really interact with directly very much, but I'm like, oh, that's cool. You know what I mean? Like I'm sort of watching from afar, like, oh, that's really cool. Yeah, so it's an awesome organization, and you mentioned that you're gearing up for this is the second Secular Women Work Conference.
Yes.
This year,
yes.
And you have a fundraiser underway for that, but we'll talk about that at the end because I definitely want to push people to the fundraiser because it's running for another about 3 weeks, a little bit more than 3 weeks on Kickstarter, and
I'm super excited to talk about it. So you're gonna have a tough time holding me back till we get there. So.
Will you shut up about the fundraiser for Secular Women Work? Come on.
And did I mention we have a Kickstarter?
And the link will be in the description and all that. Everybody who wants to go will be able to go. And I really wish people would go and support it because it sounds awesome. But before we get there, your attempts to shoehorn it into our conversation aside, we got to talk about the Lawrence Krauss thing. And
we do.
And what a misogynist shithole the atheist community is. Oh, I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't. But because you were recently a guest on Thomas Smith's podcast, Serious Inquiries Only, which is
that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, Thomas is one of the good guys. He's not always as mean as I wish he was, but he's a good guy and his heart's in the right place. And I really think he's a great guy. And you were on and talked about this, but I guess you recorded before the event in Phoenix where Sam Harris and Matt Dillahunty gave I guess we can call them their responses to the Krauss allegations.
Actually we recorded like the day after.
Okay.
But I hadn't seen the video of the intro yet.
Okay.
So
okay.
That was
And I assume everybody watching this knows the basics, but we'll go over a few of them anyway, just because I feel like there are still some misunderstandings. Some of that is willful, honestly. I think some people are just they're missing the point on purpose. But Lawrence Krauss has had accusations and sort of rumors about him for years in the secular community. I knew about it. Someone who was interviewed for the BuzzFeed article had told me about it last year, and I saw the infamous picture. The picture snapped right before the boob grab, so he was known to behave this way in the community, but it was sort of kept under the radar for fear that people would be sued or they would lose their positions or whatever. And then the BuzzFeed article came out, and one of the defenses or attempts to derail, from this subject by people who want to defend Krauss or try to salvage him for some reason is, oh well, it's just a BuzzFeed article. It's he said, she said, and that's not
Right.
exactly the case, though, is it?
No, not at all. It's just a BuzzFeed article written by investigative reporters who spent months putting this together. I mean, there are a lot of us who had been contacted. I wasn't contacted about this particular piece, but a lot of my friends knew it was coming down the pipes for months. But it was held up with basically, I think for the most part, the legal team, making sure that they could put this together and publish it, that they had enough and had their shit together. And I mean, a lot of work went into this article. They contacted colleges, they contacted, organizations and people, and made sure that they had all of their ducks in a row before just, this isn't, I heard on the grapevine that Lawrence Krauss did this thing. It's not that kind of story. It names people, it names places, it names times. And it does sometimes not give the people's real name, because can you blame them when you see, the amount of harassment and everything that comes out? But no, this is a pretty solid piece. And I think people really want to, brush it away from that. But I think aren't two of the journalists award winners too?
Yeah, and I think what a lot of people don't think of, or maybe don't even know. I mean, BuzzFeed, the website in total, does have a reputation of being like a clickbait site, and that's fair. But about a few years ago, and this was news at the time. I remember reading about this when this happened. About a couple years ago, BuzzFeed spent a lot of money and hired an investigative journalism division.
Right.
And this story, and lots of other stories as well, but this story is one of the fruits of that endeavor. These aren't just people writing listicles, top 5 people that Lawrence Krauss sexually harassed, right? It's a real work of investigative journalism. And I know one of the people that was interviewed for it, I think it was Phil Torres, although I might be getting that wrong, but he said they spoke to him, and they interviewed him for hours. I mean, it wasn't just like they just called him up or found him on, Facebook Messenger and was like, "Hey, have you heard this shit about Krauss?" And he was just like, "Yep." And they were like, "Thanks." I mean, they actually they conducted an interview to find out what he knew and how he could corroborate it and who else they could talk to. They did journalism. And,
right, exactly.
And it doesn't mean that it's 100% certain that it's not the same thing as saying, well, Krauss is definitely guilty, but it does make it, to my way of thinking, far more likely that he is guilty than that he is not. I mean, it's not the sort of frivolous rumor that people are trying to dismiss it as.
Right. And it does show a pattern of behavior over decades.
Yeah.
And it's from, Case Western time forward. And that was 10 years ago he left Case Western.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's, not like, whatever, even if it was just one person and they had one person's story and they laid it all out, like some other atheist names that we know, very solid story with people who corroborate the details from the night of. That would be enough. But this is multiple women, 2 institutions that restrict his presence on their grounds. That alone, right there, there. They already did their investigations, and that's what they came to decide was, no, we're just not going to let you back here without some really good reason.
Yeah, exactly. So the people who want to continue to defend Krauss or to not even, because a lot of people are doing is they're not necessarily outright defending him. They're just trying to create space. They're just trying to create, more doubt than there probably is. Like, well, okay, that's what she said, and that's what she said, and this and this happened. But what about, they're just trying to come up with excuses for why they shouldn't come to a conclusion about this yet. And one of the other things they have to deal with is not just the very credible and believable allegations made against Krauss through many years by many different people, independent of one another. that have all been corroborated and verified, and most of them have names attached to them. But also Krauss's own behavior, which, you know, cannot be used to conclusively decide his guilt, but certainly doesn't look good. Like his defense of Jeffrey Epstein, which was years ago.
Really gross, yes.
But does not look good. Yeah, is gross. And
Yep.
and the worst part about that, well, the worst part, I almost said the worst part was the way he tried to co-opt science to explain his defense. But the worst part is that he defended Jeffrey Epstein.
Right. And then he did it poorly. But the fact that he did it.
The defense is the worst part. But the fact that he said, look, I'm a scientist. And I have to, and then he says, look, I'm a scientist. And then he describes this awful application of the scientific method. It's like, if I'm just judging you by what you just said, you're not a very good scientist.
Right, and exactly.
Like, because he said, I have to go by the empirical evidence, and I've never seen him, you know, he has young girls around all the time, but they're all between the ages of 19 and 23, which I thought was oddly specific.
Yes, he's carded them all. And he knows. He's seen their IDs. He knows their ages. And he knows that Epstein doesn't dare do anything when Krauss isn't there watching.
Exactly.
So, yes.
What the hell are you doing?
Well, that's interesting because that is the defense that so many men like to use. That, well, I never see it, so there is no sexism.
Oh, yeah.
It's
big
the
time.
same, Dahmer. I never saw Dahmer actually eat a person. He's
How do we know he really did? Yeah.
Right. You know, and the people who are all on this, innocent until proven guilty, and yet Epstein, confessed.
Yeah, confessed,
and
was convicted.
Right, and they're still not satisfied. No, he was innocent.
Yeah, he's making
Sandusky.
it up.
Yeah, right. Sandusky was convicted. They have a conviction. Yet that still isn't enough for people. And Skeptic magazine's printing book reviews saying that no, Sandusky was really innocent. So even the people who are saying if there's no conviction, it didn't happen, are now saying, well, even if there's a conviction, we don't believe it happened.
But, I mean, I see that happening a lot. And it doesn't surprise me to see it happening in this situation because we've seen this sort of thing before. But that happens a lot where people will say, they'll set a standard for what they will accept, and then when they reach that standard, they move the goalpost, and all of a sudden that standard isn't good enough. Like I remember people saying for years, and even up through the most recent presidential election, when so much of the rhetoric was anti-immigrant, and people were saying, well, we don't like illegal immigration. We're perfectly fine with legal immigration. And you're like, oh, well, okay. And then now all of a sudden they're not okay with just
we didn't mean
immigration.
All legal immigration. We meant
like,
just immigration of the good ones.
Exactly. It's like, well, I thought you said only illegal immigration was bad. Why are you trying to take steps to reduce legal immigration as well? Oh, it's just this thing. It's like, oh, so it's really immigration that you have a problem with.
It's really immigrants. They have a problem.
It's immigrants that you have a problem with, not legal status. That really doesn't matter to you at all, does it? And with this, it's the same thing. It's like you use he was never convicted in a court of law as an excuse, but when an abuser is convicted in a court of law, that's not always good enough either.
No, but a lot of the ones that do argue against that have a vested interest in people not believing accusers.
Oh yeah.
Case in point, Kraus.
Exactly.
Point Shermer.
Exactly. Well, and that's another thing about, because you mentioned that when we started talking about this, that this article has been in the works for months, and of course, because this was written by professional journalists who seem to have ethics and standards, Krauss himself was contacted about it. So Krauss and his responses are in the article.
Bitches lie is basically his response. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I'm famous, and this is just what happens to famous people.
The conspiracy theory of a bunch of women who have no connection to each other, and the organizations all decided that nothing was wrong, and it was a malicious complaint.
Which isn't true in some cases. It's exactly the opposite of what they actually decided. But he knew that this was coming down the pike, and it's really a bad look when you realize that after he knew that BuzzFeed was preparing this article about his series of offenses, he starts retweeting articles trying to undermine the Me Too movement. And
vested interest.
Yeah, as do a lot of other prominent skeptics, like Shermer has done that. Shermer's done, God, the list of sins of Michael Shermer could fill a fucking book.
That's another show entirely.
Yeah, you could publish a monthly magazine about the awful shit that Michael Shermer has done.
Well, and actually, just to jump in really quickly, it's a bit sad that the article on Shermer came out when it did, because if it would have come out after Me Too, it would have gotten the same level of scrutiny, I believe, that the Krauss article is. But since it was before that, it was just brushed aside. But back to what you were saying.
No, I agree completely. It's one of those things, the Me Too movement in general. I mean, it's one of the things about it is it's long overdue, and you sort of have to wonder when you look at it from like a sociological standpoint, like why is this moment the moment that people started paying attention? Why wasn't it 20 years ago? Why wasn't it 10 years ago? For atheists, why wasn't it Shermer? Why is it Kraus that everybody's starting to go, oh shit, maybe this is a problem?
That would be an interesting study, because you could figure out why was it that marriage equality finally, pushed over the edge when it did. What is that point? Do a study, bring it back. We'll do some amazing activism.
Right, exactly. I mean, it's fascinating, because like marriage equality is such a great example where
Thank you.
In my state of Maryland, we had the situation where we legalized it before the Supreme Court ruling. So props to us.
There you go, you.
But what was interesting was the bill to legalize it in Maryland came up and was defeated, and then was passed the very next year. Like, it was that fast.
Right, just 1 year.
Yeah, rejected to accept it, and then that same year it passed a popular referendum. So we were like, so there, it's legal for real,
Right.
But yeah, it happened so quickly. And with the Me Too movement, it feels like we're in that same sort of rapid change where it's like people are all of a sudden noticing something that's been there all along and going, wait, this is messed up. We need to fix this.
But I mean, that's really a short-term approach or look on it to say it happened so quickly, because I know it looks like, from our lives that it did happen so quickly. But when you look at how long the activism has been going on around marriage equality, and that, just like I said, we just finally got to that tip where it went over and the momentum took it with it. But, the backlash that it's facing now, but everything is backlash right now. We're living in backlash.
And with Me Too, it was the same thing. A lot of people knew about Harvey Weinstein before the New York Times article. That was what pushed it over.
Right. And, wasn't it in his contract that they couldn't fire him for harassment claims?
Gee, that's not.
I don't remember if that was him or O'Reilly.
That might have been that.
Yeah.
That sounds like O'Reilly.
Well, I know O'Reilly they couldn't fire him for it as long as he paid the women off.
Yeah.
As long as he was the one paying, they weren't going to fire him for it. But Weinstein's had something in it too, and I don't remember what it was, but it was similarly gross. And they knew. Yeah. I mean, the people hiring him knew that there was this problem, and yet they, just wanted to clean their own liability.
Yeah, exactly. And we see that the secular community is not immune to the same kind of behavior. I find it incredibly hard to believe, given how many other people had heard the stories about Kraus, that people high up in CFI did not know these stories, or people high up in RDFRS did not know these stories. I mean,
the high up in CFI knew, because he was quoted in the article.
Yeah.
The former president, saying, hey, am I going to lose money on this? No, then I don't care.
Sweet. Yeah, exactly. There is an appalling level of tolerance and look, sort of an eagerness to look the other way, that is very unbecoming, and that's a very mild, cordial way of putting it on my part.
Yes, very much so.
But
Kraus was the first one that I was told about when I joined the movement. He was the first name that bubbled up, and this isn't news. This BuzzFeed article, in a way, isn't news. It's just public. We need a phrase. Maybe there is a term for that. It's something that everybody knew, but now it's out there, and so now they all have to confront it.
Yeah.
It's that Harris and Dillahunty knew,
of course,
that Kraus was this way before they went on stage, but it wasn't until it was public and people started complaining about it that they confronted it.
Yeah. That let's talk about that, because that's one of the difficult things for a lot.
I have notes on that. Let me bring up my notes. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
She's got notes, everybody. She came loaded for bear. So yeah, the after the BuzzFeed article came out, I think it was later the same week, there was an event scheduled. There was an event scheduled in Phoenix, and it was Kraus and Sam Harris and Matt Dillahunty was going to be there for some reason, because I think Matt just likes being on stage with people more famous than him. And I'm all out of fucks to give about Matt Dillahunty. I'll just go ahead and tell you, I am so over that. It's not even funny, but yeah, so there was going to be this event in Phoenix, and the day of the event, it was decided that Kraus would not participate. So they went ahead and did the event anyway with Sam Harris and Matt Dillahunty, and they began the event with by addressing the allegations against Kraus in a tone similar to how a scolded child who was being forced to talk about it would probably talk about it. And yeah, well,
we don't want to talk about this because it's going to overshadow everything, but we're going to talk about it so it doesn't overshadow everything.
I mean, if there's anything, it's like, if there's one thing that Sam Harris said during that response that I think you could take as a statement for his entire attitude toward the whole thing, it would be when he said, well, we didn't want Lawrence to be here, because then this event would have been about that, and we wouldn't have been able to talk about science or whatever, and that wouldn't be fair.
Right.
Okay, I can tell how important you think this is.
Well, his cherished friend is under assault. I mean, he did use the word assault for what Kraus is facing. And he didn't think it would be fair to make him respond to those accusations tonight. Like this was all a shock and surprise, and Kraus had no idea this was coming, even though he responded in the damn article already. They already got his answer and responses. His bitches lied. That was his response, so it was a really, they did what, about a 10-12 minute intro that managed to get online about this. And oh goodness, some of the things, if there's somebody that he has to sue, maybe he has to figure that out. If there's somebody he has to sue, the movement, the free speech movement, the movement that all ideas are put out there for free exchange, and that we all need to be able to talk about them, except for, if you're Lawrence Krauss and Richard Carrier, I guess, then you just sue people into silence.
That's okay. Yeah. Interrupting someone at a talk, or shouting them down because they're pushing bigotry or ignorance, that's completely unacceptable. But suing people so they're too scared to talk, that's fine. Right.
Suing, what is it, 2 blog networks, a conference, and some individuals over talking about your admitted behavior. That's what Carrier's doing.
Talking about stuff that people knew already.
And that you said,
told them.
You're right, I did that. I know. But no, we're going to sue him. And everybody's all like, sure, Carrier, he's a good guy, whatever. He's just making people spend thousands of dollars just to have a voice. Yeah.
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 Yep. So no, I don't know. A lot of, in the article, it was mentioned that some of the pieces were taken down because people were afraid that Kraus was going to sue them.
Yeah.
And that is a very real threat. He has a lot more money than I think most of the people in that article, the people who were interviewed, did. So.
Well, yeah, he's still cashing those physics of Star Trek checks, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. Well, and his talking schedule with Dawkins.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah. Which has not been canceled yet. It's
still up on Krauss's page as of today.
Well, I mean, the thing about, and we can, if you have more to say from your notes, we can get into that as well. Because it's because to me the real lasting damage to the secular community from incidents like this is not what Krauss actually did. It's the fact that there are people like Sam Harris, like Matt Dillahunty, like all of the people with an audience, with a platform, with influence in the community who knew about it and who acted to create an environment where Krauss could do the things he did and not have to feel like he would face repercussions.
Right. And yeah, that is one of the worst parts of it. And even, you know, if you want to have a little bit of empathy for Dillahunty too, the fact that he wouldn't be able to have the career that he wants to have, pardon me, if he wasn't writing the coattails here, if he wasn't doing the events with Harris and Shermer and Kraus, because up until I think the day after this event happened, he was still slated to intro Shermer.
Right.
The following, I think that was this week or something. So, you know, you can, however much you want to weigh that factor in, but I don't think that he then gets to turn around and throw women under the bus and act like this is all an assault on him when people ask questions.
No. Well, but that's his move, though. I mean, that's his move. That was his move last year when people started challenging him about attending MythCon, you know. Was, and actually, I believe it wasn't the MythCon thing, but it was something else. It was some atheist related scandal that happened last year, and Dillahunty was quiet about it for a few days, and people were like, when are you going to say something? And he gave the exact same excuse then that he gave in Phoenix, which was, I was on a plane.
Right.
Oh, that's a good excuse. Okay, you were on a plane.
Okay. How about now?
Yeah, exactly. How about now?
How about now? Are you on a plane now? You want to talk about it?
And how about you just respond to it without making yourself into the victim? Well, no, maybe that.
Yeah, it would be nice.
It's possible. You know, it's not all about you. It's not about you at all, actually, except for the fact that you completely failed to do what you should have done.
Well, it was. Yeah. Both of them really talked about the hyperbole of Me Too and Me Too going too far, and the conflation of sexual assault with sexual harassment. And Harris even pretty much said that Me Too is only about assault, and these harassment claims don't belong in there.
Because it's up to him.
Right. Because that's the only thing the women should be complaining about, right? Is assault.
Yeah. We should
still be putting up. Right.
Yeah. Tolerate it up to the point that it becomes illegal, and then we can do something about it. That everybody knows that's how society works.
Exactly. When the Al Franken thing started going down, and anytime we talked about it, well, it's not like, you know, he's Weinstein. Never said he was.
Okay.
I don't necessarily think Kraus belongs in jail, but he's got to be, you know, stopped from the behavior that he's doing. You know, I mean, that's the whole thing, is the behavior needs to stop. That's what women want. All of this behavior, all of this inappropriate behavior that, it everywhere needs to stop.
Yeah.
That's what Me Too's about.
And when people try to make it just about people doing illegal things, I think and again, this is something that I think we do this a lot, and it's probably a natural thing because we like to solve problems, and if we confront a problem that we can't solve or that we think is going to be incredibly difficult to solve, sometimes we come up with a much simpler problem and we focus on that instead. And if you say, well, it's just about assault, you know, and we focus just on that, and we convince ourselves that that's really the problem, then we can ignore this much, much older, larger, more complicated problem of, it's not just assault, it's, you know, gender attitudes, it's sexism, it's all of these things that have been sort of baked into all of us for centuries that we need to start looking at and trying to change, which is a lot more difficult than just saying, well, we just need to find the people who are committing assault and get rid of them.
Right, you know? Right. Isn't that easy? Yeah. And then they throw in the straw man. Well, a man's not even going to be able to flirt then.
Well, and you know what,
I'm going to end up in jail.
Well, and you know, I mean, that's obviously not true. But even if it was true, my response to that as a man would be, well, so what? Like, you're not entitled to anything. Like, even if the problem was so extreme that the solution was no more flirting, I mean, yeah, that would suck. But if the trade-off for that is no more sexual assault, I mean, are you saying that's not worth it? I mean,
where's the balance here?
Like, and it's not even true. There's nothing. if you approach with an attitude of respect, and you are able to recognize and respect another person's boundaries, there's nothing wrong with flirting. There's nothing wrong with being playful with someone, as long as you don't. If someone gives you the feeling that they want to be left the hell alone,
right,
just leave them alone.
I know consent really isn't as hard as people try to make it out to be. It's really not.
People pretend that it's this maze that you have to navigate every time you begin an interaction with someone, and really all you have to do is just pay attention.
Yeah, I know. And if you can't make me scream yes, then you're doing the wrong thing anyway.
and the other thing is, and I think a lot of people lose sight of this, in most cases, not everybody, but in most cases, even if you do unthinkingly, like truly accidentally cross a line without meaning to, if someone checks you and you immediately back up and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that was a problem," and you stop
and learn from it,
and that's usually okay.
Usually it's okay.
It doesn't, it's not one strike and you're out. It's everybody fucks up. If you fuck up and the person says, "Well, okay, hold on, just no more of that."
Right.
and you stop. They might not want to keep hanging out with you. They might think you're a creep, but you're not gonna, it's not, you know what I mean? It's not gonna like ruin your career. That's where I get,
so many men's careers have been ruined. Just because of accusations. Look at how many accusations it took Cosby.
Oh my God, 50 years and like 50 accusers, and
and that's something. And this has really, really been getting under my skin. Is it's taken this long for the accusations of Kraus to be taken seriously at all. He's had a career.
Oh yeah.
How many women didn't get to have a career because of his behavior?
Exactly. How many left the movement entirely?
Right. Oh, I know. Tons of them. And that's just the thing that really, really grates on me, is they get to keep, it's like we're going and finally prosecuting the racist white guys for all the lynching they did 50 years ago, but now we're bringing them to trial after they've lived out their lives and they're old and stuff.
It's like, well, that's nice.
There's no equation there, but
it's justice extremely deferred.
Mm-hmm.
The quote is, "Justice deferred is justice denied." Well, it's justice extremely deferred. and in Krauss's case, we're in this weird place right now where there are a lot of people in the community who are still sort of trying to figure out if there's even going to be justice, because there are people like us who are like, "Oh, to hell with him," like open the door and kick him out and then lock the door.
Right.
But then there are other people who are like, "Well, let's think about this." And I don't know what they're waiting for exactly. I don't know if they're waiting for, a second or a third or a fourth BuzzFeed article. Well, maybe you got one BuzzFeed article out of it, but if you can get 5 or 6 more articles with fresh accusers, if it turns out that he's one of the greatest monsters of the last 20 years, well, then maybe we'll kick him out.
Maybe. But they'll always find someone else to compare with, but he's no Weinstein,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, that's one of the things, to take it back to what Harris said, because there was that point that Harris tried to make about like, "Oh, there's no distinctions being drawn," which is false. It just shows he's not actually paying attention to what's happening.
Right. We do know the difference, I promise.
Yeah. There's a difference between Harvey Weinstein and Aziz Ansari.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is that they're both unacceptable. That doesn't mean that they're equal. That doesn't mean that they should both go to prison, but they're both unacceptable, and they're both both stories show behavior that should change. They're both things you should not do.
Exactly.
But that doesn't mean that there's no distinction. And Harris saying that, and then he has, after spending most of his response trying to undermine the women coming forward and the premise of the Me Too movement, he has the balls to say, "My instinct is to believe accusers." Like, what did you just?
He has the guts to say it too.
Oh. Yeah, the guts. Yes.
Yeah.
The temerity.
Temerity would be better.
I'm going to put my English degree to work and say he has the temerity to say.
Right.
Yeah, I mean that's just and as other people have pointed out, even though Dillahunty canceled his appearance with Shermer, Sam Harris, as far as I know, is still appearing with Shermer at an upcoming event. So he believes accusers, but I mean, not
But
really.
not Shermer's accusers.
Well, it's like it's like all you have to do is say it.
Right.
You don't have to actually do anything. All I have to do is say, "Oh no, I believe women when they accuse men of things."
I believe them until, then I look at individual cases and I disbelieve all of those individual cases is pretty much.
I'm still going to hang out with the men who are accused. I mean, okay.
Right. I mean, he's my friend. He's my cherished friend.
Yes.
Who's under assault.
Yeah. And I feel like a big man when my face is on a poster with his.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not a celebrity person. I live local to the Rock Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
And I went and I'm like, I don't get it. I'm looking at John Lennon's, grade school report card and I'm going, I don't get it. So yeah, face on a poster with Lawrence Krauss, whatever. I don't get the appeal of that, I guess. I don't know.
I mean, I've never been like, I never got super famous in the skeptic community in the first place. So I guess in a way it's easier for me because I've always sort of been at a relatively low level.
Let's hear it for nobodies.
Yay. And so it's easy. I mean, so like when I burn a bridge, it's not that big of a deal. And I've gotten to the point where I kind of enjoy it. It feels cleansing when I'm like, oh, he said that. You know what I mean? Like, forget it.
Yeah.
And
I think with me, it's mostly people are cutting the ropes as I'm trying to cross, I don't have to cross, hurry up. They're already on fire.
Yeah. But I mean, it's because what I've found personally is it's much easier to not have to carry that baggage around.
Yeah.
It's much easier to not have to have an excuse ready for why I'm still trying to legitimize or justify a person who, even if they didn't do anything Kraussian in proportion themselves, they certainly seem okay with it, or they don't seem that bothered by it.
Right, which ends up being complicit because they're not going to stop the behavior. They're part of the problem. Amanda Marcotte in her Salon piece, I don't know if you read that one.
I did, yes.
Where she talks about kind of the movement splitting. They were called the deep riffs. I misspoke when she interviewed me and I called it great riffs, but they were referred to as the deep riffs long ago when it was the slime pit and the harassment and women going, organizations, you need to do something about this because you're driving us out. And they went, whistle, whistle, what? Free speech, everybody, whatever. And it is tempting. It is tempting to just say, fine, I'm going to take my toys and go home and do this work over there. But we're talking about organizations that have been around for decades and have infrastructure and have all the money and all of the resources. And then we're going to go start our own thing. We're not going to get anywhere. It's going to be so much more work to do it that way. So I'm really, really trying to work with the organizations and with the movement to make things better so that we don't have to just go and split and do our own thing. And wow, are people really trying to make it difficult?
Yeah, I was going to ask you earlier when we were talking about secular woman, but this is a good spot to ask the question as well, because have you noticed change? Have you noticed, has there been some improvement? Because I know from my perspective, as someone who has not been involved directly in organizing and putting on events and stuff like that, superficially it seems like things are a little better than they were in 2012. It seems like there's more representation of women or of people of color or of a more diverse group on stage at events than there was 6 or 7 years ago. But at the same time, it also is obvious that these problems still persist and are still very serious. I mean, from your perspective, have things improved in any sort of
Well, according to Peter Boghossian, since I'm a progressive, I don't look at any improvement at all.
Oh, that's right.
Right. So put that out there. But no, I mean, I think that the biggest indicators that we have right now is that the Shermer article came out and was ignored by all the organizations.
Yeah.
Pardon me. The Krauss article came out and was not.
That's good. Yeah.
That is a difference. I think, we see a lot of up and down. We see a lot of blowback, and then we get a little bit and then blowback, because we can have conferences like Secular Women Work, and CFI has done Women in Secularism, and where it's all women on stage. And then you have MythCon, so it's two, I think, just struggles going on right now that they're pulling against each other. And I think Stephanie Zvan made a really good point in the Amanda Marcotte article as well, is that the organizations keep catering to this old guard, because that's where their money is. And they are just totally not being, and are going to miss out on this whole next generation coming up who are more secular than anyone else, more diverse than anybody else, than any generation has been. But they're totally out of touch with them and not focusing on them. So, yes, no. Is my answer.
I mean, I that's kind of what I figured the answer would be, because it does, in some ways, it's just from my perspective as someone who doesn't really know firsthand. It seems like some things are better.
Why don't you know, Steve? Why don't you know?
Because nobody talks to me. No, I don't, because I don't play nice with others. No, it does seem like certain things are better, but it also seems like certain things really still need to get a lot better. And, that's another thing I've kind of figured out at length after many years of not getting it, is that there is a danger in getting too attached to that idea that things have gotten better. Because you of course you have to acknowledge progress, and you have to celebrate your advances and your achievements. Like with marriage equality, we have to be like, yeah, that's great. It's awesome that we finally did that. But you can't just sit there. You can't let that let you become complacent. So if you look at, boy, look, there's a higher percentage of women being invited to speak.
Hey, we're done.
Yeah, exactly. Like, no, there's still some really serious issues here, so you don't want to get too married to, well, things are better.
Yeah, and that's about politics and everything, really. It's you've got to be vigilant. You got to keep on. It's rights take work, equality takes work, and you just got to keep pushing. Otherwise, I mean, because really, if you look at representation, are you familiar with the Gina Davis Institute?
I don't think I am, actually.
Oh, check it out. They do some great work. They did the misrepresentation, and they look at representation of women in the entertainment industry.
Right.
And we were going up until like 2009 hit, and then we did this nosedive when the crash hit. The same thing in IT. It was like another one of those, okay, women are getting in all of a sudden. No, it was like a blowback where the men all went, no, we're going to push the women out. This is our territory kind of thing. Not that anybody thinks about that and says that is their goal, but that's just how the attitudes change and happen. So it's a constant flux that we got to, I mean, look at the pendulum swing of just our administration.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess you hope that the next time it goes down, it won't go down quite as far as last time, and the next time it goes up, it'll go up a little higher.
Right. And a really big part of that is, back at the slime pit days when online harassment was still being treated as, pardon me, it's just online, it's not real. Just ignore it, whatever. And we were going, no, look at these guys. This is awful. This needs to be addressed. And now we have the alt-right.
Yeah.
I mean, it went to Gamergate, and Milo Yiannopoulos just, was sprouted from that. And, listen to us when we're over here saying this is some bad shit that you got to take care of. Take care of your shit, or it grows into something worse.
Yeah.
It's like molds and multiplies.
It is. I know I was guilty of that myself when Trump was elected, because I was one of those people, and I even made videos about it that are still on my channel, where I was like, yeah, he's awful, but he's not going to win. And then he won, and I noticed I had all these friends, many of whom were people of color, who were sort of looking at me like, we fucking told you. And I was like, shit, like, I didn't realize how shitty things still were. And or how dangerous it was to
Right.
to
Right.
give breathing room to people who only want to hurt people.
Yeah.
I think that's the real lesson in a lot of this, in Trump, in MythCon, in the alt-right's rise to prominence, is that these aren't ideas that should be played with.
No, no, no. And that's a big thing, though. We have this free speech part of the movement that thinks, no, they need to give the platform. You need to let them talk. And then you just, you can respond in Q&A or something. Like, Richard Spencer's ideas of a white separatist nation is something that we need to take seriously and give air to, like it's new. This is something new that these people have never heard before. Yeah.
Yeah. Everything that is happening has happened before. And it's when you see people pointing out direct parallels, it's kind of striking where, and everybody, of course, it's very tempting to jump straight to Hitler, where it's like, this is what happened before the rise of Hitler. But
let's talk about ICE in that capacity.
Yeah. I mean,
just grabbing people and shipping them out.
Yeah. Or that's an even better example than the one I was going to say. We should listen. We should listen. We're going to flip this around. You're going to host the show.
Okay, there you go. Welcome to my. No.
But I just saw someone I follow on Twitter a couple of days ago posted it was a Nazi propaganda poster from Germany in the 1920s, before the Nazis actually took over, when they were still on the rise.
So on the rise there, yeah.
And it was a poster that was complaining about the fact that Hitler was being prevented from speaking. Like they were defending Hitler. Well, what about free speech? And it's literally the same arguments that are being made now in defense of people like Spencer and the whole rogues gallery of shitty people that are, skating on that same defense of, well, I have a right to say what I want to say, and people should be forced to listen to me because that's how it works.
Yeah, they've got a right to say it, but they don't have a right to say it to me.
Yeah. And if you
I'm not listening.
Well, and if you control a platform, you're under no obligation to invite them, or to give your stage or your microphone or your podcast or your TV show or whatever over to them. Like that's ridiculous. And if someone's whole jam is we should have a white ethno state, why are you listening to this person? Like what?
Why are you taking them seriously in any capacity at all? Yeah.
Why aren't they? I mean, because I'm going to be 38 this year, so I'm not super old.
That's almost dead.
I know. I'm early pre-middle age. That's what I'm going with.
Hey, you're talking to a grandma, so it's all relative.
Oh yeah, I have the mind and body of a much younger person. No, and when I was a kid, the kooks who now have TV shows and widely listened to radio shows and internet presences, who have hundreds of thousands or in some cases even millions of followers, like they were writing self-published books that you could buy at truck stops. They were handing out mimeograph newsletters on street corners. Like they were fringe, and their message didn't get out to more than a few people.
Yes, and then social media came along and we said, oh, here, talk to everybody. I know, it's one of those good bads, it's Twitter helped the Arab Spring, and it also gave Alex Jones
exactly
followers.
It made it possible, and YouTube as well. It made it possible to make being a racist, misogynist dick your full-time job.
Well, YouTube monetized it.
Yeah.
Really. And that, are you familiar with Soraya Shamali?
Yeah.
Okay, a journalist, and she does some really good stuff. And one of her talks at Women in Secularism, she had talked about the internet and spaces being made by white men for white men. Oh. And when you do that, you get Twitter and you get harassment problems. You get Siri that will tell you where there's a titty bar but no abortion clinics. You get fitness tracking programs that won't track menstrual cycles. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's all part of, you get YouTube with Alex Jones starring and them twiddling their thumbs for decades, not doing anything about any kind of harassment. Decades,
Yeah.
maybe stretching it a little bit.
But I mean, Alex Jones hasn't been doing it on YouTube for decades, but he has
Right.
been doing
Has
what
been
he
doing it for
does for
decades.
decades. I mean,
Right.
and yeah, it's one of the, it's, I mean, what's the excuse? Like,
Right.
if I,
It's too hard.
yeah,
Too hard.
it's like,
I mean, if you block comments, you don't get as many shares, right?
yeah,
Isn't that kind of right?
yeah,
And so you have to let all of these gross people say gross things. I mean, this is ridiculous.
yeah, and when something truly so awful that they can't ignore it anymore happens, then YouTube pretends to pay attention for a couple of days,
Right.
and
Oh,
then hopes that it,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
well, it's just like it seems like this cycle repeats even quicker now. Like every couple weeks, like some like YouTube or Twitter will release some public, and they'll say like, how do you think we should improve our platform? Or, what new features would you like to see for Twitter or YouTube?
Right.
And everybody always says, ban the white supremacists,
Right.
fix
Get
your
rid of
comment
the
section.
trolls.
Yeah,
Yeah.
get rid of the trolls. And that never happens. They're like, what about a more character limit?
Right.
Oh,
No, what
oh,
about something that we want to do? Because we can handle giving you a bigger character
yeah.
limit.
What about this thing we were planning to do anyway before we asked?
Yeah, how about this? Well, when Jeff Bezos went on Twitter and said, "How should I do my philanthropy with all my money?" And I'm thinking, 1 in 10 employees of yours in the state of Ohio is on assistance. So how
Yeah,
about you give them a livable fucking wage?
exactly.
We can start there. Your focus should be on income inequality.
Oh,
Hey,
but can he deduct that from his taxes?
right, right. Maybe if he personally gives them each, you know.
Yeah. Hey, listen, how dare you tell him to spend his money?
I know, just because he asked.
Authoritarian, fascist, how
I'm
dare you?
awful.
Yeah,
Man hater.
just because he asked. He brought
I
it
should have known. He wasn't talking to me.
up. Yeah. No, not you. Shush.
No.
Yes, you, sir.
Since YouTube is kind of still on the topic, I do want to
Yeah.
point out the video of Harris and Dillahunty on stage. One of my favorite comments that I saw, because I was flipping through it, was Jacob says, the possibility of these accusations being Christian-backed has to be considered. Christianity feels cornered, repressed, and persecuted, and a false retaliation is always a possibility. So, one, I'm sure that Jen McCrite and Rebecca Watson are tickled pink that, they're accused of being Christian undercover.
They're sleeper agents.
Right. But two, just the idea that, nah, this isn't real. It's all fake by the Christians because Kraus has been so awful to them.
Yeah, and how many conspiracy theories did atheists invent to excuse clergy sex abuse? None. Nobody,
Right.
not a single atheist that I ever heard responded to the accusations that priests were raping people and molesting people with anything other than sympathy for the victims and outrage at what had happened. And yet,
Right.
look at so many of these same people who are coming up with every excuse they can think of to either excuse Kraus or to just not talk about it as if it's not really a problem.
Yeah, well, and they did the same thing with Sandusky on when Skeptic Magazine published that review. It was all, bitches lie and their kids lie too. It was all implanted memories.
Yeah. Which, I mean, we could do a whole show about that. We're like, I mean, if you all you have to do, the court documents are publicly available. The appeals judge specifically said that recovered memories had nothing to do with his conviction.
I know. But, there was this right-wing radio host that had some info, and it was really good. So this guy wrote a book about it.
Folks, it was all recovered memories. It's bullshit.
Well, that's a really big thing you want to push when you're facing accusations of your own. You want people to disbelieve that any of them are true.
That's it. And it's it's so transparent that it's amazing that they even try it. And yet they'd try it because they know
they
that
get away with it.
yeah, they get away with it. They know that there
Yeah.
will be a most of their dedicated audience will buy it.
Right. Look at a lot of the people who were attacking the BuzzFeed article, and I'm thinking particularly of this one convention organizer in Canada. I don't remember his name, but he's all over in the comments. He's attacking Rebecca Watson and Jen McCreight as crazy right off the bat.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Oh,
because bitches lie, they're crazy, they'll do anything. And or Melody Hensley, I'm sorry, that's who he was attacking, Melody and Rebecca.
What's the difference?
Pardon my cat. I forgot to put her. I was going to put her away before this happened because she gets really attention starved right at this time of day.
I don't mind a kitty cameo. My cat's asleep on the couch right now, so she will not be entering. But this is her nap time. This is her 20 hours a day when she naps.
I gotcha. It's getting close to dinner time, so they all get a little feed me now.
Oh, yeah, I know what that's like.
Mm-hmm.
Like, stop what you're doing and give me what I want.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting. I'll just mention this one last thing, and then we'll wrap up by talking about secular women work.
See, I've been good.
You have.
Did I mention we have a Kickstarter?
The restraint is amazing.
I know.
One of my favorite bad classic TV shows is MacGyver, and there's a scene in MacGyver that my wife and I joke about all the time, where MacGyver had to spend the night like camping out with a woman that he worked with, and the woman they woke up the next morning, and the woman rolls over to MacGyver and says, I have to say, credit where credit is due, you were a perfect gentleman last night. And MacGyver says, yeah, I don't know how I did it, but somehow I controlled myself. And I thought maybe we should put that like on a t-shirt and just hand it out to people. Like,
I don't know how I did it.
I don't know how I did it, but I controlled myself.
I managed to control myself. I know,
it's that's there are these little sort of red flags or little tells that you learn to kind of perceive, and one of them is people's response to Rebecca Watson, where if they have like a really, really reactionary negative response to just the mention of her name, I kind of think, oh, okay. Like I remember the first time it happened, there was a friend of mine who used to be a fellow atheist YouTuber. I don't know if he still makes videos or not, because I don't talk to him anymore.
That was another bridge. That was
yeah, but and he said, and just out of the blue one day he messages me and says, "What do you think of Rebecca Watson?" And I said, I never had a problem with her. She seems fine to me.
Right.
And
she's kind of funny,
Yeah, I think she seems okay to me. And he said, well, I think she's incredibly dangerous. And I was like, what did she do?
You put an AK, an AR-15 in her hand, she's going to be dangerous. She'll hit a target from... No, yeah, what is she going to do to him? I mean, stab him in the eye? I don't...
Yeah, well, and I mean, like, what has she... I'm racking my brains for anything she's ever said that was remotely controversial to a reasonable person. I mean, and of course it all went back to Elevator Gate, and he had somehow, convinced himself that she had said that all men are rapists, and it's just like, okay.
Right. Let's listen to her actual words. And that was one of those pivotal moments where the organizations had a chance to do something, to at least try and stem the tide. But that Dear Muslima email that Dawkins posted on Feringula in response to that gave the go-ahead to all of his followers that it was open season.
Yeah, exactly.
And that wasn't the last time he did that either.
No, of course not. Well, I mean, Christ, I don't think he has said anything definitive about Kraus yet, but he somehow found time to tweet about how maybe lab grown meat will mean that we can start eating human flesh in the future. Like, what? I just thought it was an interesting thought experiment. Okay, that's great. Thank you so much for sharing your
well, I don't know that we'll get a comment from him. We got a comment from CFI, which CFI and RDF now are the same, saying that they are, for now, cutting ties with Kraus pending further information, which I'm not sure what that means. But, at least they took him off his honorary board member. He's not on CSI site as a fellow anymore, so props to them that they did take a step. It's going to be interesting to watch, though. I mean, how long was it before American Atheist made a statement like that afternoon?
Yeah.
It really shouldn't take that long to be able to look at this and say, this really looks bad for us, and we owe it to our members to maintain their safety. And,
and American Humanists as well, I think, the same day. And they had an even bigger hole to dig out of because Krauss was Humanist of the Year like 2 years ago.
Right. Which they did manage to get into the tweet, They
acknowledged it. They were like, okay.
Right. And I know that the SSA Twitter account retweeted both of those statements. So, there you have at least 3 organizations, which, the SSA has their own issues with the whole carrier thing. Maybe we're making, and when you ask me better or for worse, is it better or worse? The organizations are at least paying attention to the public news, not the news, but everybody else knows it now.
Yeah.
So at least they're responding to that.
Yeah. I mean, it's frustrating that it is this way. It's frustrating that you can only really expect real attention or action on these problems when the rest of the world is paying attention. It's like, well, okay, if it's going to start making us look bad, then we better do something. Like, I hate that that's how it is, but apparently that's how it is.
I mean, not just we should do something because it's the right thing to do. That would be the dream reaction that we want. It's not too much to ask for, is it?
Well,
I mean, isn't that why we're in this activism thing? Is to do the right thing, to make the world a better place. This is one of those ways.
Yeah,
you have humanist anywhere in your mission statement.
It's not even that difficult. I mean, this is not one of those gray areas.
Right.
Like, yes, there are, sometimes life gets complicated. There are challenging questions we will have to grapple with. I don't see how this is one.
Like, no. I know it's very clear to us because, yeah.
Okay. So I think we have reveled in the
shit part of the shit sandwich.
The moral repugnance of the community which we choose to include ourselves in. Let's talk about something good. Let's talk about something awesome. Secular Women Work is coming up. You have a fundraiser, I am told. I've heard.
I do. Where did you hear that?
I just heard it somewhere. Somebody mentioned it. So tell us about Secular Women Work and tell people how they can help out.
Okay, Secular Women Work. We had our first conference in 2015 in August in Minneapolis, and it was amazing. It is a conference focused on activism. We know that people are out there. We know they're doing the work. And so many times the way activism gets picked up is there is a person that sees there's a problem and they see that nobody else is doing it and they jump in. They don't have a clue what they're doing because, you're just like, hey, this needs done. Let's go fix it. How do we do it? I don't know. So you constantly have all these reinventing of the wheel and learning as you go the whole time. So what our goal is for this is to bring the people who have been through it, who know how to do it, together to show the activists how to do it. They could be more effective, they could be more efficient, and the movement as a whole gets better then. So our conference is all women or genderqueer presenters. We have panels, workshops, and keynote speakers. This year, the 3 names that we have off the bat are Greta Christina, beloved author and wonderful activist and all-around great person.
Awesome.
Mandisa Thomas, who is the founder of Black Nonbelievers, again, all-around great activist, incredible person. And Jessica Zhao. And if you have not had Jessica on your show yet, you should reach out to her.
I
She's
should, because we know each other on Facebook. I should reach out to her.
Yeah, and she's really incredible. She does a lot of activism she works with prisoners, teaching them writing,
Hmm.
and works on a prisoner reading project, and also works towards abolition of prisons,
Yeah.
which I think is a very laudable goal.
Yeah.
And she was with us at Skepticon when we did our imposter syndrome workshop. She joined in for us to facilitate that. So it's going to be such a wonderful time. We get so many amazing people up there, and just, being there at a conference when everybody there is involved in the same kind of stuff you do is
Yeah.
really, really empowering, and it's a whole different dynamic. It's fabulous. So yes, our Kickstarter hits the end of February. It'll go for a month. We reached 25% today.
Yeah.
Yay! I've been tweeting I've been tweeting so much. Since I'm the unemployed one right now, I get to do all the social media. But we're still not talking about that. But yes, if you can't go, you can buy a ticket so someone else can go. If you're
Oh,
an
that's great.
organization or a show or just somebody who wants to talk about the love, you could buy ads in our program. If you are an organization and you want to talk to us about tabling or maybe sending a speaker, we
Mm.
are wide open on that. And your name will get put out there. And yeah, we just brought on Black Non-Believers actually as another sponsoring organization. So now it's Secular Woman, Minnesota Atheists, and Black Non-Believers putting on this conference. So
That's a
yeah.
pretty good group. That's a
Yeah,
pretty good group.
I love the women I'm working with. They are amazing and they really know how to get stuff done. Which Yeah, I mean, when you put us together, now just give us the resources we need and we can
Yeah.
take over the world.
Yeah, really. I mean, that what I love about it is, I mean, it checks two boxes that I think the secular community needs to check, which is foregrounding women in the movement and giving them a more prominent voice and a more prominent place, and focusing on activism, because there is a lot. I mean, even like a lot of really, really good conferences, it's a lot of just sort of mutual congratulation,
Yeah.
like, oh boy, isn't religion dumb, and isn't atheism great, and aren't we cool that we all figured it out and we got together and now here we are, like, and
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with that. But I mean, if that's all you end up doing and you don't, like, encourage and motivate people to transform
Give them a
their.
takeaway, something
Yeah,
to take back and work with. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, a
Well,
call to action.
right. Yeah. Well, there are a couple out there. I will give a shout out to the Secular Social Justice Conference that's coming up
Yes.
in DC in April, which Secular Women will be there.
Oh, cool.
That was started by Sikivu Hutchinson,
Yes.
who one of the few people that I will fangirl about because
Oh,
I think
totally.
she's incredible.
Totally. Yeah, I'm going to be there too, and
Oh, great.
I'm looking forward to meeting her as well. I read her book Moral Combat on the train
Hmm.
back and forth from the Last Reason rally, and I just thought it was amazing. So yeah,
Yeah. And then, and I don't have the details of this, but on the same day, I know there's an event in Milwaukee
yeah,
that, hold on, let me pull that up if you don't mind,
go for it.
because I think that one's pretty important, where it is and what it's doing,
Yeah,
because it kind of came as a response of
yeah,
we need to do something.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
It's, I think Callie Wright will be there, and I think Eli Bosnick and Thomas Smith will be there.
yeah, and I'm not
Yeah.
finding it, but you could put it in show notes, right?
Yeah, it's actually
Okay.
it's the Brew City benefit. That's
Yes,
what
the
it's
Brew
called.
City benefit.
That's what
Thank
it's
you.
called.
And then,
Um,
yeah, that is on the same day
it's the
of
same day
the
as
secular
secular.
social justice.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, but no, I think they're kind of spread out there, so it'll be good. The people who can't make it to DC can make it to Milwaukee, and do some good there.
Yeah.
Um, and I will give CFI credit for their women in secularism conferences too, um, and hopefully they'll have another one, because it's the same kind of thing. It's just so incredible having women on the stage, focusing on that, on women in secularism and getting their points of view and the things that don't come out when it's, all men on the stage. So
yeah. Well, and the other good thing about that, and you brought this up a little bit earlier when you talked about, I think you were talking about Sam on your board, how she, it's more of a behind the scenes type of thing, not really someone who gets out and gets famous.
Felicity,
Felicity,
yeah.
yes. And Stephanie Zvan has made this point as well, that, a lot of the groundwork, a lot of the behind the scenes volunteer work that makes these secular events happen is done by women. Like predominantly women are the volunteers, are the ones who do the groundwork, are the ones who book the events and, book the speakers and handle all of the actual, running of the event. And so it's, it's only fair that women are represented in the front-facing part of the movement and are listened to when they have things to say or have concerns about the way things are being done. It just seems, it seems like it's only fair.
Yeah, you would think. Yeah, I mean, there's, we've made room in this movement for 4 or 5 people whose names are heard and are, the big names and are given all the stages and this is something that Seth Andrews feels very strongly about, those cheap seats and those nobodies who try to voice opinion about what he's talking about. And if he doesn't know you, you're in. And I am a nobody. I mean, who am I? I have a high school degree. That's it. I've never been to college. I'm not a scientist. I'm not out there doing talks, whatever. But I'm doing the work. I have legislation in the Ohio Senate right now. This is the stuff that people are missing out when celebrity, woo.
Yeah, but how's your radio voice? That's what really counts.
Hey, I had a radio show for a while. I have an awesome radio voice. Thank you very much.
I think you have an excellent radio voice, but
Well, thank you. So do I.
Oh my God, you're so conceited.
I know. I do love those experiments. I think that another one just went around on Facebook about, women just accepting their, I know.
Just accept it. Yeah, I know. I'm pretty great.
Yeah. Which is also fun. Interestingly enough, the kind of same thing that you do, to combat imposter syndrome, which I have really, really badly. Go figure. Is to that was the hardest thing for me, is to just say thank you when someone gave me a compliment, instead of going, oh, thanks, but blah, 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 blah. Here are all the problems with what you just complimented me on. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I usually just say thanks because otherwise I don't know what else to say. I just sort of, because whenever people, like, I'm not well known enough to get recognized very much, but like when a couple people came up to me at the Reason rally last time and were like, oh, well, and they were very nice, and I'm not prepared for that. You know what I mean? I'm just like, I'm just like, oh, thank you so much. Like,
now I feel awkward.
Yeah. Like, should we talk? Like, what happens next? Like, do I have to stand here for a while?
Right. Hands in my pocket.
Yeah. Yeah. God, I didn't ask for your life story. Jesus. I'm glad you like my videos. Now, come on. I was on my way somewhere. No, I don't. I'm not like that. That's terrible.
What are you thinking on the inside? No. Again.
Oh, don't. Yeah, he's pulling out pictures of his kid. God.
I was looking at my phone the other day and I'm like, 30 pictures of my cats. Oh, there's a picture of my grandkids. 30 more pictures of my cats. I'm an awful grandmother.
Yeah, I mean, if it's an adorable cat, it's an adorable cat,
All cats are adorable.
How can you help it,
Yeah. Love my grandkids. They're the best, obviously.
Just in case they watch this.
Right.
Grandma said the cats were cuter.
No, I didn't say they were cuter.
No, that's true. You're right. I should not be putting words in your mouth.
Right.
That is. Yep.
I didn't refute it either, but I didn't say. No.
Your damning silence.
My grandkids are right. I'll tell you at my next appearance how I feel about my grandkids.
I'll have more to say at this ticketed event at which I'll be speaking. Right.
Pay to come see me, and then to find out how I feel.
It's not shitty at all to use your response to a horrible abuse scandal to sell tickets to an event. That's completely what normal,
An event on
moral
consent.
people do. Hmm?
Yeah, an
Yeah.
event focused on consent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah. Just oh, so many. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's been disillusioning, but at the same time, it's like it's good to know who everybody is. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
like with people like Matt Dillahunty or Seth Andrews, where it's like, oh, I used to think I could count on those guys. Now, at least now I know. At least now I know how much they're actually good for,
Right, right.
and
That
I
is.
can move on. You know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. You get to a point where I guess you don't count on men a lot
That's
in the
understandable.
line of stuff that I'm in.
That's
I'm
understandable.
trying to put that, I'm not surprised when the names come out. I'm not surprised anymore. I'm
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
whatever. It's like, okay, especially when and I'm let me be clear, I'm not putting Matt or Seth into this category,
Right.
but the category of the overly feminist man who turns out to be one of the grossest ones.
Oh
There were
yeah.
some names. Who is it? Hugo Schweitzer that had
Mm.
his like public meltdown on Twitter multiple times of,
Yeah.
I tried to kill my girlfriend and
Yeah. Oh,
you know, yeah, he
you
had some
did.
fun stuff
Yeah.
on there. Um,
Yeah.
Slept with my students but he was the feminist man. And so, yeah,
I'm
you just
a,
get to a point.
you've got this all wrong. I'm one of the good guys. Well,
Oh,
that's
right.
yeah, go
Sorry.
ahead. No,
Well,
go ahead.
you had actually brought that up before when we were talking before we were recording about
Yeah.
the good guy. Therefore, I can't be, you know, fill in the
Yeah.
blank, racist, feminist, whatever. And I see that from especially progressive men a lot. That yeah, they think they are the good ones and that they're aware of racism and they're aware of feminism. Therefore, anything they say can't be wrong. And when you go, well, no, that thing you did was pretty fucked up. And then, all of a sudden they're all like, no, not me. I'm one of the good guys. And that's, what you get when Ron Apocalypse happened at
Mm.
Women in Secularism too, when Ron
Yeah.
Lindsay did that horrid intro to the conference that, feminists make sure you're feministing right because I don't think you are.
Thanks,
He
Ron.
was, yeah, all the people defending him are like, but he's one of the good guys. He can't be sexist. It's like, I don't care if he's sexist. This act he just did is
Yeah.
pretty dang sexist.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
I mean, that's again, it's a lesson that I have learned and will probably have to learn again because it's just, it's something that comes up from time to time is, when someone comes to you with a concern about something that you've said or done, dismissing it out of hand is never the right thing to do,
right.
like ever. And I mean, there have been changes that I've had to make both in my private life and in the way I do my YouTube stuff, certain words I don't want to use anymore, certain subjects that I need to maybe just not talk about at all because I
Right,
don't know,
right,
because I don't have, any standing or whatever. And I've said this before, like it hasn't always been easy because some of it is like really deeply entrenched behavior that you just can't
right.
shrug off, but I've never ever regretted it. Like I've never looked back a year later and said, "Oh man, you
I
know,
was way too politically
yeah,
correct.
I wish I hadn't decided to stop saying the C word. I really regret that."
Right, right.
Like
That
what?
was silly of me.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I wish I could get that year back and just say it all, just a whole bunch.
I
I,
know.
I mean, I
I
don't
was on
get.
the wrong side of history with that one.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah. Crazy and stupid are two words that are really, really heavy
yeah,
in our culture that I'm really trying to get over. And that is a tough one. Or those are tough ones. Those are
yeah,
tough too.
yeah,
But yeah, there are some topics too that it's like, you know what, I'm gonna ignore this one until my brain gets through it all and figures it out.
yeah,
It's like I'm not really sure where to stand on it, so
yeah,
I'm not gonna jump in and try and defend one way or the other until I've got it figured out. I'll just
yeah,
wait and just
yeah.
eschew the whole situation. Yeah. So, but no regrets on, you know, not doing that.
Yeah, like I kind of want to be a better person.
Right.
You
Oh,
know,
I
like,
really regret being nicer to people this past year.
yeah, I mean, self-improvement is great, but if I'm gonna have to be uncomfortable, then I'm just not on board for it. Like, I just
Right. Wait, don't I just get to say I'm one of the good ones? And
exactly,
by virtue of saying it, I become one of the good ones. I'm an
ex
ally. You know
exactly.
this because I'm telling you that I'm an ally.
I had I had one of the organizers of MythCon say to me on Twitter last year when
Mm,
their whole shit show was blowing up, and I was throwing tantrum after tantrum about it on
right.
Twitter, and cannot because years ago before that happened, I was on their podcast. I was a guest on their podcast, and one of them said to me on Twitter, because I was just going off on, how
Mm,
dare you invite these people, and blah blah blah, and one of them said, Steve, you were on our show. You know us. You know that this isn't what we're about. And I
so what are
was
you
like,
doing?
yeah, exactly. I was like, so am I imagining all this? Did you not invite these people? Like, did you not say these things? I mean,
Right.
I'm sorry. It's
Then what are you about if not this thing that you're doing right now?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, I mean, there are ties that I have cut relatively recently in the secular community that I used to think were great people. To hell with them. I
Right.
mean, like, and it's not easy. It sucks. It's
It does.
disillusioning, but to hell with you. If it's beyond you to say, I believe these people coming forward about Lawrence Krauss or Michael Shermer, and because I believe them, I'm not going to have anything to do with these men anymore. Like, if that's too much for you, then to hell with you.
Right.
I don't need,
And
yeah,
just think of all the incredible voices that we could find
yeah,
by other people being able to take the stage, other
exactly.
people being able to write, other people being able to speak in place of the same voices that we have been listening to over and over and over for
Mm,
years.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
put some women up there, put some people of color up there.
Please. Yeah. And I love this because whenever a white dude like me, or actually, and Thomas said this as well when he was at MythCon last year, we're completely in favor of, yes, put more women on stage, put more people of color on stage. That's great. And of course, the dipshit response is always, oh, but you're a white guy, so you're deplatforming yourself. Like,
Okay.
maybe I think that there's more, maybe I think there's something more important.
Right, right. Then my spot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or
that's
maybe I have my own show and I'm okay with that. And I don't need to be
right.
invited to
You
everything.
don't need all the shows.
Yeah.
All the shows don't have to be about you.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
this, and it's they really they show their cards when they do that, when they're like, because also what you're saying is you can't imagine someone else having a priority that put people other than themselves ahead of them
Right.
because that's how you think.
Right,
You know,
exactly.
like,
No, take my spot. I'm good.
yeah.
Hey,
I
did I mention we have a Kickstarter?
you have a Kickstarter?
We have a Kickstarter. It's made 25% of the total budgeting so far.
What's this Kickstarter for? I'm sorry.
Secular Women Work. Number 2.
Oh,
It's our conference. It's
there's
awesome.
you're having a conference?
We are in August in Minneapolis.
I will put the info for the Kickstarter in the description of this video, as well as the Secular Woman page. And anybody, please, if you can't afford to donate, then share the link and encourage other people to donate. If you can't afford to donate, please donate. You couldn't imagine a better cause. If you are someone like me, like Monette, who is very frustrated and concerned with a lot of the things that have been happening in the secular community, and you want to help make things better, this is a great practical, concrete step that you can take to help make things better, to support organizations and events like Secular Women Work. So I would encourage everybody who sees this to do whatever you can to support that event.
I'm quoting you on that. Do whatever
Yeah.
you can to support that event. Rob a bank.
Rob
Steve
a bank. Yes. Defraud your wealthy
Scott.
relatives of
There
their
you go. Embezzle from your company.
dad. Can I have my inheritance early?
No.
I hate you. I hate you. You're not my real father. Yeah.
It's that important, folks. It's that
Yeah, it
important.
is. I mean, it is. It's not. I mean, don't really rob a bank,
No,
God. But
we
yeah,
don't
I mean, if you
advocate criminal activity
if
in
you
support of our conference.
if you have some, there you go. So covered, done. But if you have some spare change, if you have an extra 20 or $50 laying around, that's because that's spare change. What the hell am I saying? If you can afford to donate, then donate to the Kickstarter, because it's a super, super deserving cause, and it's going to be an awesome conference, I'm sure.
Yeah, we'll take any amount. Our lowest pledge level is $5 for the love, simply for the love of the conference. I promise you, if you pledge $5, we will feel that love. We do. Every time the little money goes up, I'm like, oh, love. But yeah, if you can't make it, you can still support us. You can even send somebody else.
That is really cool. I've never heard of that before. You can buy a ticket for someone else. That's so cool.
It is. I mean,
Yeah.
it's necessary. It's we secular women used to do conference grants. When we were first organized, where women would reach out to us and say, I want to go to this conference and I can't afford it, and we would do a fundraiser and get money to send them. So this is
awesome.
at least their ticket will be covered, and then we can work on their travel and room and board.
That's awesome. That's terrific. All right. So let's leave it at that. Monette Richards, president of Secular Women Work Conference, coming up. The Kickstarter is linked in the description. Thank you so much for joining me. We should do this again sometime.
Thank you for having me. Yes, we should do it often.
How's tomorrow for you?
All right. I'm unemployed.
My job is YouTube, so I'm basically, I'm not.
You're not going anywhere either.
I'm not enough of a dick to get rich on doing YouTube. So I pay my bills. But anyway, thank you so much for joining me, Monette. Thanks to everybody for watching, and I'll see you later.